Wow, stories.
Am I the idiot for filing for divorce? After my husband cheated with a student's mom. My husband, 32-year-old male, had an affair with one of his students, 6-year-old male's mom, 22-year-old female, Cynthia. Since the affair, I've tried multiple times to leave. I've tried to leave after work. He had hidden a tile tracker in my car, so my Apple Tag reader didn't pick it up. He's cried to me while trying to leave. He refuses to let me go to the grocery store, walk our dog, or sometimes even use the bathroom alone. I don't recognize this person anymore, and I'm terrified. He and Cynthia began chatting due to her son's individualized education program for autism, and things have only escalated from there. A few weeks ago, Cynthia tried to unfortunately take her own life. And being a true stand-up guy, my husband visited her almost every day at the hospital. She essentially had a nervous breakdown. During this time, I was so proud of my husband for being there for a single mother and her son. It's hard to be a single parent. My dad was one, and I knew the challenges it comes with. I don't get jealous easily and was glad he was making friends on his first year of being a teacher. In the coming weeks, he grew closer to Cynthia and became more critical of me. It came to a head last weekend. I went camping with my sister and her kids out of town. He said he had projects at the house he wanted to work on, and so he only joined for the last day of the trip. When I returned home, our house, and particularly our bedroom, was in a state of disarray. Like things had been shifted and moved ever so slightly and in an odd manner. We have a trash can in our closet, and there was a used condom waiting for me at the top of the trash. Then, when I took his car to the car wash, there was a women's shoe in the back seat. While he was in the shower, he left his phone charging where I saw the evidence. Cynthia made the first move around the time she was released from the hospital. She was very forward and evidently didn't care if I figured out. My husband denied her only twice before he got with the program. I feel disappointed and disgusting, but took screenshots of it all. I even secretly recorded when I confronted him about it. He screamed, he cried. He swore he'd never do it again. He swore he'd get tested. My moods have cycled through phases of rage, depression, and numbness. I don't know who this man is anymore. He won't let me leave. He said he won't give up on us. He's been trying to emotionally manipulate me into feeling guilt or sympathy for him, but I simply can't. I feel nothing. My husband and I have been together for 8 years and married for under 1 year by my choice. How can I even begin to trust this man anymore? I sometimes think it'll be better if I sleep in my car than to be in the house with him. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Tell your family and get help to leave. Also, take your vehicle to a mechanic or police station after leaving to get it checked for any trackers. You have some options. Don't be afraid to ask your family for help. And if possible, try to get it recorded that he's putting trackers in on your property so that maybe this can be used to get a restraining order and help you get out. Comment 2. Call the police. Simple as that. You clearly have a phone as you're on here. Call the police and tell them he cheated. Now he is holding you hostage. Have them come and hold him off while you pack, and you will be getting a restraining order. Also, call his job and have him fired. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since the last post. After the confrontation, things got even more complicated. My husband started acting like he was on his best behavior, but I could see through it. He was overly attentive, constantly asking if I needed anything, and trying to initiate conversations about our future. It felt forced and insincere. I knew he was trying to make up for what he did, but it only made me feel more trapped. One evening, about a week after the confrontation, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. I needed some air and time to think. I told him I was going to the store, but really, I just wanted to be alone. As I walked, I bumped into our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She's an older lady who always seems to know what's going on. She mentioned seeing Cynthia's car parked outside our house a few times when I wasn't home. It was like a punch to the gut, confirming my worst fears. When I got back home, I confronted my husband again. This time, I didn't hold back. I told him about Mrs. Thompson and how I knew he was still seeing Cynthia. He tried to deny it at first, but eventually he broke down and admitted it. He said he felt responsible for her well-being and that she needed him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like he was trying to justify his betrayal. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called Cynthia and asked to meet her. Surprisingly, she agreed. We met at a coffee shop and I laid everything out on the table. I told her how her relationship with my husband was destroying my life. She seemed genuinely remorseful and said she never meant for things to get this far. She admitted that she was in a vulnerable place and that my husband was there for her when she needed someone. It was hard to hear, but I appreciated her honesty. After our meeting, I felt a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew the full story. But it didn't make things any easier. My husband and I had a long talk that night. He apologized again and said he wanted to make things right. He suggested couples therapy, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. I needed time to process everything. Over the next few days, I noticed a change in my husband. He seemed more distant, almost like he was giving me space. It was a welcome change, but it also made me realize how much our relationship had deteriorated. I started thinking about my own future and what I wanted. I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic environment forever. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I got a message from an old friend, Lisa. We hadn't talked in years, but she had heard about what was going on and wanted to check in. We ended up talking for hours, and it felt good to reconnect with someone who knew me before all this chaos. Lisa reminded me of who I used to be and what I was capable of. The next day, I made a decision. I packed a bag and told my husband I was going to stay with Lisa for a while. He didn't try to stop me this time. He just looked defeated. As I drove away, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. I knew this was the first step towards reclaiming my life. Staying with Lisa was a breath of fresh air. She was supportive and understanding, and it felt good to be around someone who genuinely cared about me. We spent hours talking about everything that had happened, and she helped me see things from a different perspective. She reminded me that I deserved better, and that it was okay to put myself first. During my time with Lisa, I started to reflect on my relationship with my husband. I realized that there were red flags from the beginning that I had ignored. He was always a bit controlling, but I had brushed it off as him being protective. Looking back, I could see how his behavior had gradually escalated over the years. One night, Lisa and I were sitting on her porch, sipping wine and talking about the past. She brought up a memory from college when I had stood up to a professor who was being unfair. She reminded me of how strong and confident I used to be. It was a wake-up call. I realized that I had lost a part of myself in this relationship, and it was time to get it back. I decided to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was the right one. I met with a lawyer and started the process. When I told my husband, he was devastated. He begged me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. I told him that I needed to do this for myself. The fallout was intense. My husband tried to guilt-trip me, saying that I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. But I knew that staying with him would only continue the cycle of manipulation and control. I had to break free. As I moved forward with the divorce, I started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, started going to therapy, and focused on my career. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in years. Looking back, I realized that my husband's affair was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a symptom of a much deeper issue in our relationship. I had allowed myself to be controlled and manipulated for too long, and it was time to take back my power.